Namaste, yogis. So I've prepared a video for you today just of some staple yoga poses that you might need to know before you go into a yoga class. So we're starting here in mountain pose, and I'm bringing my hands to heart center. Sometimes I like to rock back and forth from my toes to my heels, and I like to wiggle my toes and make sure that I'm firmly planted on the ground, feeling the four corners of the feet. And from here, we're going to move into chair pose, which is also another commonly used yoga pose. So I take my hands, I bring my heart center, and I'm going to inhale them up and sit my bottom straight back, coming into chair pose. I want my thighs to be somewhat parallel to my mat and the floor, and I want my knees not too far over my toes. And when you look down, you should be able to see those big toes. I'm also pulling the belly button back towards the spine here, making sure my core is nice and strong. Now from here, I'm going to inhale my hands up and fall just straight down into forward fold. For forward fold, I just like to let my body hang with a slight bend in my knees, enabling me to release my lower back. And you can also grab either elbow and hang here. Forward fold is usually pretty straightforward. Don't worry too much about keeping those knees all the way straight or locking them. And again, feel free to grab those elbows and rock side to side here. So now from our forward fold, I'm going to step straight back to my plank position, just like I'm doing a push-up. See a nice straight line coming from the top of my head down to my heels, making sure those hands are under the shoulders. And if you need to modify, you can drop down to those knees. Still keep it a nice straight line from the top of your head down to your knees. Tighten in the core, pulling the belly button back towards the spine. And then you can push up into your down dog, which is, of course, one of the most commonly used poses in any yoga practice. Now you can notice my heels are on the ground, but your heels do not have to touch the ground if you're not quite at that point yet. I'm just pushing my heels towards the ground and also pushing my chest back towards those thighs, trying to make a nice upside down V shape here, letting my head and neck relax down. And you can also feel free to drop down to those knees and extend those arms out and come to puppy pose if you're not quite ready for your down dog yet. And I'm also taking a moment here, bending each knee, stretching those calves out. That's something you can do as well, but it's optional. And from here, we're going to rise up into my warrior one. I'm extending my left leg back and then stepping it up in between the hands. Feel free to come down on the knee and then step the foot up. I rotate my back heel down so that my back foot is parallel to the back of my mat. And then my front leg, the knee is aligned over my ankle and my arms are straight up, palms facing each other. Again, this is your warrior one. And warrior two is essentially the same thing. You just drop those arms out wide. And when I look from the front to the back, I'm checking the alignment of my arms, making sure one isn't too far to the right or to the left. And my gaze is over my first two fingers. Legs are the same as in warrior one. And then from here, I just stepped up to my forward fold. There's plank again. And there's down dog again. I'm taking my right foot, stepping it forward. Again, you can always drop that knee down to the ground first and then step it up. And this is how warrior one looks on the other side. My knee is aligned almost perfectly over my ankle. Back heel is almost parallel to the back of my mat. Sometimes it might be at a slight angle, which is okay. And then warrior two looks like this. Arms dropped out wide. Gaze in front of the first two fingers, checking the alignment of my arms. It's very important that you keep that knee almost directly over the ankle. You don't want it too far forward or too far back, too far to the left or too far to the right. That can cause injury to your knee. Now I'm stepping back up to my forward fold and I'm back in my mountain pose. I'm going to face the front of my mat and the camera so I can show you tree pose. And tree pose typically has 3 options. Option 1 is the heel on the ankle. Toes are still on the ground. This is usually the easier option. Option 2, you can slide it up to the calf. Option 3, I grab my ankle and bring my foot up on my thigh. Notice how with either of these options, my foot is either above or below my knee. You never want your foot resting on the knee, putting pressure on the knee because it could injure you. And then I find a focal point in front of me, and that's called your jishti, and that just helps you balance. I'll show you on the other side. Option 1, I'm on here on my ankle. Option 2, I slide my foot up to my calf. Option 3, I grab my ankle, I rest my foot on my thigh. Find my focal point here that helps me balance. Don't be surprised if you're more balanced on one side than the other. That's common. And again, my foot has not rested on my knee. I'm releasing my foot here. And then I'm going to make my way down to the ground to show you child's pose. So I just step back to my down dog and I drop down to my knees. And then I bring those big toes together and start shifting my weight back towards my heels with my arms extended out in front of me. Now, for some people, it isn't comfortable to sit all the way back on the heels. So feel free to keep your tailbone up in the air with the arms extended out, or you can place a rolled up blanket or towel underneath those thighs just to create some space there. And also, some people prefer to keep those knees close together when they're sitting back to child's pose, which is also acceptable. Just work within your range of motion and what feels comfortable for your body. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're not comfortable sitting all the way back on those heels, you can keep the tailbone up and just extend the arms straight out in front of you for puppy pose. This is also a down dog variation. So if you're not quite ready to be off those knees and all the way up in your down dog, you can always drop down to the knees and come to puppy pose instead. So from here, I'm going to just bring those feet out in front of me. And then I'm going to move into what's called bound angle pose. Bring the bottom of those feet together. I'll face the camera so you can see what it looks like from that angle. And I'll just grab on my ankles here. Some people like to grab the big toes or cup the feet. And I'll just take an inhale with a nice straight back. And I exhale, lead with the chest as I lower down. Pretty straightforward. And just a quick note, you'll notice in my videos I'm always just wearing regular clothes. Whatever's in the basket, I grab it and put it on. There's no need to buy anything fancy for yoga unless you desire to do so. I always just throw on some shorts or some leggings and a tank top or a t-shirt, and it works great. I've slowly rolled back up to a seated position and I'm bringing those legs straight out in front of me, making sure I'm on those sits bones. I take an inhale with a nice straight back and lead with the chest as I fall down over the legs for an easy seated forward bend. Now, some people aren't able to reach their toes or their ankles, which is totally fine. You can bend your knees a little bit here, and that'll give you some range to lower down a little bit more. And also, don't feel pressure to be able to touch your toes. Your flexibility is earned and it takes time. Then to come out of the pose, I just roll back up, nice and slow. And from here, I'm going to make my way down to my back to show you a couple poses on the ground. I'm going to show you bridge pose. I have my feet flat on the ground, my arms extended straight out in front of me, and I just squeeze my glutes and lift my hips off the ground, making a nice plane from those knees down to the ground. Think about being able to roll a marble from the knees down towards your neck. And then I come down nice and slow, one vertebrae at a time when I want to come out of the pose. And I'll show you one more time. I squeeze those glutes in the back of those thighs and I lift the hips off the ground. You can also bring your palms facing upward. Some people prefer to do that. Then again, to come out of it, I roll back down one vertebrae at a time. And then a finisher, which is used in absolutely every yoga class, is corpse pose. And this is the pose you'll usually find yourself in when you're moving into Shavasana or the very end meditation of the class. And my legs are just extended out towards either side of my mat, and my arms are just straight out to my sides. Thank you guys for joining me. I hope this video was helpful to you. Namaste.